Okay, so what are we going to try and do in this session? Okay, we're going to look at this shift from land, labor, and capital to time, attention, priority. Okay, we'll see why senior leaders are looking at modern KM in this way. And I think the most interesting thing for many of you, as I say, it's one of the hottest areas today, what they're looking for and why the role of knowledge management is so in demand today. But there's a certain type of knowledge manager that they're looking for, and perhaps I can help you in this session to make that paradigm shift. Okay, let's get going. So let's start with a quote from one of the great knowledge management thinkers who sadly passed away last month, a gentleman called Larry Prusak. If you don't know him, it's worth looking him up. Many of the people as speakers at the conference over these 2 days have said, made wonderful tributes to Larry and his contribution to knowledge management. He was an academic, a New Yorker, taught out of Columbia for quite a while and worked for IBM. But he was famous for his quotes and being something of a visionary. So have a look at this quote that I've kind of used to give us a focal point. Let's test this and prove this point. He probably said it ahead of its time. I'm able to confirm with evidence that this is indeed what is happening today. So what is he saying? He's saying that companies that don't adapt to understanding knowledge, realizing that knowledge is a force of production, right? Not old knowledge management, which is document-centered, explicit knowledge, but actually a force of production. More important than land, labor, and capital. If they don't realize this, they will slowly die and will never know what killed them. Well, I would take it one step further and say today they will quickly die and never know what killed them. Let's have a look at how this plays out in the marketplace today. But this quote really sets the stage for the challenge that leaders have and what they're looking for from knowledge management. Okay, well, I'll come on to that. Let me explain it. Let's have some fun here. So let's look at these brands following Larry's dictum. They will never know what killed them. Many of you will know these brands intimately if you're of a certain age. Others of you will have heard of these brands, but I'll just pick one of them to illustrate my point. We'll take the Nokia phone bottom left picture. Oh, those of you of a certain age will remember the famous film, The Matrix, the first Matrix film that came out with the actor Keanu Reeves. And if you remember, it was one of the early incarnations of product placement. Today, it's everywhere. All the Bond films have it, etc. But this was one of the early incarnations of the corporate product placement directly in the plot line of the story. So if you remember the character in Matrix, he used this Nokia phone. It was instrumental in allowing him to move between dimensions and so on and so forth. At that time, Nokia, for most of us, was like a god company. You know, it was untouchable. You could never have imagined a world in which Nokia would not be existing as a mobile phone operator. They were dominant. Everybody had them, and many of you would have owned them as well. Well, within not even a generation, not even a working lifetime, right? Within a matter of less than a decade, they are non-existent, as are all of these brands, okay? And here's the interesting thing. None of these brands needed to have become obsolete, right? It wasn't that they struggled in the area of land, labor, and capital. These were some of the biggest and most powerful brands in the world, right? They struggled from their inability, and this was the point I wanted to make earlier, to future-proof themselves. And modern knowledge management, this is the big focus right now, is about helping organizations future-proof themselves. So hang on to that concept and let's develop it a little further. So I mentioned that I'm going to give you evidence that's fresh. So this is from, I do a lot of private client work with PwC. This is in the public domain, so you can all get hold of this. One of the great things that big global consultancies like PwC can do that, with respect, the Knowledge Management Institute can't do. We're a boutique specialist consultancy. They're a global, big, multidiscipline consultancy. They can do this, what they call their annual CEO survey. So this is from this year, 2023. They do an annual survey. They spoke to about 4,500 CEOs globally, okay? And 40% of those CEOs said, if they do not reinvent their company in the next 5-10 years, they will not be viable. So this is the speed of change that is occurring, the level of disruption that is occurring in organizations today, and the dilemma that leaders face. More important, Larry Prusak was right, more important than land, labor, and capital is the ability to become the continuous learning company, to become agile, to adapt, okay, and to be able to future-proof both the employees and the organization. Everyone knows that any brand you look at today, and we'll do a little story at the end to do with the automotive industry, any brand you can think of today is not going to be the same in 10 years' time. It's either going to have disappeared and been replaced by something else, or it's going to have pivoted to something else. Okay, Google began as a search engine, then mutated into other things like Google Doc, Gmail, etc. Many of you may or may not know Google has been experimenting with driverless cars, and Google also owns its own power supply. Okay, it buys more and more of its own. So wind farms, off-sea generation, Google has moved into that area. So the best companies are pivoting, and therefore they need a workforce that can be agile, can reskill, and can reimagine the organization. This is not an easy thing to do. As they say in this report, they need to reinvent themselves, and leaders can't reinvent the company, right? The entire organization has to be participant in that pivot. And this is why knowledge management is such a big deal today, about future-proofing the organization, about future-proofing the individual. Okay, let's build on that. All right, so as I say, the speed is getting faster, okay? McKinsey report says that 75% of the FTSE 500 companies will not be here by 2027, okay? So it's the speed at which companies are brands are dying out is increasing. We live in an exponential world of exponential change, and the speed with which companies can be replaced, AI is going to be one of the big killers of brands, for sure. You're either going to have to pivot or be out. So this is the challenge. This is, again, as I say, why it's such a big deal today. Okay, the pandemic, okay, was already, it's accelerated since the pandemic, but leaders began to realize that treating knowledge as a strategic asset, okay, was a key way to future-proof the organization. And as I say, so with the pandemic, it accelerated. That really opened their eyes to the fact that that's the case. I was mentioning to Dira just before we came on air that since the pandemic, the Knowledge Management Institute, our business has gone absolutely through the roof, right? With not realizing before the pandemic that we could deliver the course even more effectively via online than we did because we did face-to-face up until then. Pandemic changed it. We thought, what's going to happen? And the organization just got stronger because now we can run the courses 24/7, global footprint. We deal with lots of big corporates. They can have people join from everywhere. And as Dira mentioned, you know, these are 4 or 5 day intensive courses. They can drive the cost down significantly, and they can do big private classes for their employees around the world. But what's also interesting and dynamic for them is by having employees from around the world participate, they create a different dynamic in the course itself. So people are learning about each other, even though they work for the same organization. So treating knowledge as a strategic asset has become a key function. Okay, again, as I say, this stuff is all pretty fresh. So this is actually, again, 2023, the World Economic Forum. What's wonderful about these classes is these are, you know, I call them students, but these are all people like yourselves, you know, working people in organizations, etc. Everybody knows something, and we share in these classes. And somebody said, oh, you'd be very interested in the latest World Economic Forum report if you're talking about this future-proofing. Okay, so this is an independent global body that's, you can find this in the public domain as well. Okay, 44% of workers' core skills are expected to change in the next 5 years. Now pause and think about that. Think about that with two hats. Put on the hat of a CEO or a leader. What does that tell you? That tells you we have to reskill. And if we can't reskill internally, we have to employ for new skills. Okay. And over to the right, it shows you how the balance between machine operations and human operations will change. The types of jobs that can be done by machines and the types of jobs that can be done by humans. Either we reskill our current population to that degree, or we have to look at a whole new recruitment policy for future skills. That's why they say now, when they're recruiting for companies, one of the top skills they look for is sometimes even over intellectual prowess, is employee adaptability. How do we test and measure for employee adaptability? Because the odds are the company is going to pivot every 5 years. And so we need employees to almost forget what they learned in the first 5 years and learn again something new in the next 5 years. Are you comfortable with that? Do you have the skills to do that? So again, there is a huge opportunity here. So if you look at that with your hat of the CEO, you can see their worries and their concerns that they're going to have to pivot. If you put your hat on as a knowledge manager, you see a massive opportunity, because knowledge needs to flow fast now through the organization. As people are skilling up on new things, that needs to be shared and moved fast across the organization. As Larry Prusak said, knowledge doesn't become a discipline, it becomes a force of production. Okay, almost like energy. It needs to flow and move fast through the organization. Okay, I'm seeing things in the chat. I'm assuming Unicom are taking care of it. If not, just come off mute if you have a question and interrupt me. All right, I'm going to have a drink of water. You take a read of this. I think this is a wonderful summary of this point of knowledge being a force of production.
Yes, Reuven, there was a comment just when you started, was that many of the organizations, let me get it up again. Dear Lord. Yes, many of our organizations fail to understand is that the consumers of knowledge, want access in it in different ways. A significant number of companies will have a YouTube presence, but also be on Facebook, Insta, and TikTok.
Great point. Now I'm going to come
other emerging platforms. So this this was very new, but it's standard approaches to many businesses.
Yeah, now this is a very interesting point, and it has another head to it, if you like. It's not just consumers that want to engage with companies in different ways and different mediums, etc. Here's the real challenge, and again, big headache for leaders, big opportunity for knowledge managers. The same is true of employees. Employees now want to engage with knowledge in the company in many different ways, and we'll come on to that in a second. So a very good point. Okay, let's build towards that point. Let's have a look here. Knowledge is the new natural resource of choice. Remember, we saw from the APQC survey, leaders see it as a strategic asset now. It's fascinating, this natural resource. It cannot be used up. It cannot be depleted, okay? It's like finding some magic elixir, right? When it is shared, it increases and expands in value. I think this is such a simple but powerful and brilliant way to look at knowledge and to understand the value, and as Larry said, why it is a force for production and why it's more important than land, labor, and capital, which can all be used up, okay? Which can all be finite, made redundant. That is not the case with knowledge and the knowledge economy and the continuous learning company. However, you can't go and buy the continuous learning company as a deliverable and then install it in the company. This is the challenge, right? It's not a technology play, right? There's plenty of tech. Tech supports knowledge. It's a culture shift play. And that's where they are looking for knowledge managers that can deliver the culture shift, not just knowledge managers that can manage processes. This is the big shift, the big challenge. Okay. Question, isn't it information that's the resource?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, okay, no. Now we need to be really careful here, okay? If it was information that was the resource, that's old knowledge management, and that can be handled by machines, okay? But it's like there's a wonderful mantra that's going around at the moment. AI is not going to take your job, but the person who knows how to use AI is going to take your job, okay? Knowledge is about the experience, okay? The experience of doing anything. That doesn't, when I mean experience, I don't mean you've got years and years of experience. The experience of even something new, right? The problem-solving experience of that, the process of discovery that happens as a result. And as we all know now, it used to be a dark secret, but now it's well talked about, 80% of any organization's knowledge is tacit. It's in people's heads. Only 20% is information, explicit knowledge, okay? And this is well documented in, well, I don't want to spoil the poll. We'll come on to that in a second. But hopefully that answers your question, but do...
there's another comment here.
Yeah. Since knowledge can become obsolete, yes. It can effectively disappear like a resource. No, that's a myth, okay? So knowledge cannot become obsolete. The information and data can become obsolete. The experience of an obsolete system is still valid when innovating. Think of an engineering company. We decided we're not going to build bridges in this way anymore. So that the reports and documents and processes about how to build bridges with those techniques are redundant, but the experience of the engineer of building bridges, how to work with suppliers, how to work with different substances, materials, testing, all those human related experience is still valuable in order to pivot correctly to the next thing. So that's where we have to differentiate, okay? Then the experience, your experience of life never becomes obsolete. It just adapts to the next scenario that you're dealing with. Yes, the data and information can become obsolete.
And says, Rose says, let's entirely agree. We need to learn how to deal with AI so we can make the best use of our time and be more creative.
This is a very important, that's why this thing is called time, attention, priority. Time is the big factor here that we need to be focused on. So well spotted, Rose.
And then Mohammed says, all basic knowledge is essential. Otherwise, we will build random items / tech solutions that have no sense.
Spot on. You know how many times we said, you know, you've looked at people who have been great performers, whether in music or sport or whatever, and they tell you, what you don't see is the 10,000 times I made a mistake, right? Or take Dyson, the inventor, right? You think it was 1,000 prototypes before he got his vacuum cleaner concept, cyclone technology working. It's that's his experience that led him to that. So you're absolutely right. Great point. Okay, let's build on that. So if you haven't watched or aware of this guy, it's worth making a note and catching it on YouTube. There's this guy, he's called Eduardo Briceno, and what he did was he studied high performers in many, building on the point I just made, high performers in many, many disciplines. Elon Musk, musicians, artists like Beyonce, and so on and so forth. And he tried to see what was a common thread that occurred. And he realized that what happens with the people that can innovate and pivot and excel, high performers, he calls them, it's almost counterintuitive initially, but when you think about it, it makes sense. High performers like Elon Musk spend more time. So we have two zones that we operate in, our learning zone and our performance zone, okay? In anything in life, as employees in the company, learning zone, performance zone. So you might say the conference, these 2 days, is a learning zone component of your thing, but in between that, there may be some performance as well as you exchange ideas with people and work on a project or whatever. But generally, conferences are a place to learn. High performers spend more time in their learning zone than in their performance zone. Yet most employees in companies spend more time in performance and less time in the learning. And the problem with that then is you cannot future-proof. It's only in the learning zone that you are able to try things out, experiment, and grow. Performance is all about applying and executing what you know. And so it's a really good video worth watching about this shift that needs to take place. And leaders, the best leaders, will start to realize that this is really important to free employees up to spend more. And that's where the great point that Rose made about time. AI will be one of the enablers to let us do this, right? It's not like AI is going to make those people redundant. It's going to make those jobs redundant. Now those employees need to pivot and go into a learning zone mode. Use AI to reinvent the company and future-proof the organization. Okay, good.
Mohammed has another point there. He said, we built the powerful computers, but still need to understand the basic binary code. Before that, we have to have a good understanding of logic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, okay, there is an argument that this is why they feel AI is a game changer, that AI will start to be able to actually develop the logic as well. But your point is valid, because we are making AI and we need to understand how we want to use AI. Because the other thing to be aware of as well is there are going to be, as with the internet, many people who are going to abuse AI, okay, and use it for, let's say, less than ethical purposes, right? So we will need to think and share our experiences and figure out how we can control that, how we can monitor that, how we can protect people against that, right? The AI isn't going to do that, so we have to figure out how to do that. So you're absolutely right. Okay. So, time for a quick poll. So, you're all knowledge managers. There's something called ISO 30401. I'll tell you what it is in a minute, but let's have a quick poll here. Now, the important thing to say about the poll, it's anonymous, okay? So it doesn't matter how you answer. We don't know who answers what. So it's good if you can answer it with your genuine thoughts, okay? We don't know, as I say, who's doing what. It just gives us a thing. So which one are you? Have you never heard of ISO 30401? Have you heard of it? Have you read some of it? And do you have your own copy? Which level are you on that spectrum? Go ahead and answer. Oh, I can't. I've got a dead screen because it's Kumar who's doing it, right? Okay. Okay, here we go. Excellent. So now take a look at these results. Now this is just a sidebar here. I can't help but do something about my course and my teaching and my beliefs. It's very important. You know, we all got survey fatigue. So let's not do knowledge management with long surveys. That's gone. Those days are dead and gone, right? But this is a pulse survey, which is very fast. And the value is you must share it with your audience immediately. So we all gain the knowledge, right? Not like when you finish, you do a survey and then you send it off and you have no idea what the company's doing with it, how other people answered. Pulse surveys are good because knowledge is moving fast. Look here how we've closed the loop. They call it closing the loop. Okay, 38, forget the numbers, just look at the percentages, okay? So, because we have 24 people on the call, but only a few have participated. So don't worry about the numbers. Look at percentages as a knowledge manager in any organization. 38% have not heard of it. 31% have heard of it. Nobody belongs to the group I've read bits, and 30, so we got a third have my own copy. Okay. The ISO 30401, we can stop the poll there. The ISO 30401 is the first standard that we've ever had for knowledge management. Even though knowledge management began in '95, we've only had a standard since this came out, which was 2018. So have a look. Now, I did another talk, Unicom, on ISO, so I'm not going to do that. I just want to make a very important point. As knowledge managers, if you don't know this document and you're not using this document, it costs like $100. You're missing a huge opportunity because it gives you incredible leverage in the organization. So here's the first point, and that kind of covers the point that somebody made earlier in the comments about information. Knowledge is intangible and complex, okay? It is created by people, okay? I've just selected a couple of quotes from this document. It's a 20-page document. You really should know it inside out as a knowledge manager today, because, as I say, it's very topical. Stan Garfield, if you know Stan Garfield, is another leading practitioner in this space. He recently ran a workshop looking at ISO and talking about how you can leverage it in organizations. Organizations can know, this is directly from the document, okay, and this came out in 2018, even though KM's been around since '95. Organizations can no longer rely on spontaneous diffusion of knowledge to keep up with the pace of change. Remember what we talked about, future-proofing, brands that will disappear, being able to pivot, adaptability. Instead, knowledge must be deliberately created, consolidated, and applied. And here's the real driver, reused faster than the rate of change. Leaders have no idea how to do this, but they need to do this, and they know that they need to do this. That's why the role of knowledge manager is so in demand today, okay? But you've got to have those skills to be able to make that happen, to fire up the continuous learning company, to break through silos, and to have knowledge move around faster makes it more important than land, labor, and capital. That's a paradigm shift that we've not seen before.
Reuven, I'm going to interrupt you 1 minute.
Sure.
This is a comment regarding the poll. Anastasia says it's wrong. It's a wrong assumption that we are all here knowledge managers.
Oh, my apologies. Okay, Dira put me right. What is the right assumption?
That everybody here attending isn't knowledge management, but
okay, fair enough. That was just me making a ridiculous, and this is good knowledge sharing, so you're putting me right.
Yeah, but there are some good knowledge managers here, Kim says.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, it would be kind of fun if you could put in the chat what other roles you've got, because I can then tie it back to what we're talking about. If you're not a knowledge manager, what are you? Would be useful to learn as we go along as well. But great point, Anastasia. My bad. I just assumed knowledge management conference, everyone's a knowledge manager. Bad assumption, bad knowledge. How do we get good knowledge? We share. And this is exactly what we're doing here in this mini version, is what they want to happen across the organization 24/7. People correcting and adjusting any misunderstanding or miscomprehension, etc.
Okay, there are some comments here.
I see. I'm with that was my jump cut. Mohammed, I was with you exactly. That you see, there is a point. Drucker says everybody is a knowledge worker. So maybe that was the phrase I should have said, is knowledge worker, and therefore he's right. Everyone manages knowledge, even if it's not your role. There's no way around that. And so now we know. Anastasia is a business analyst, project manager. If there was time today, I would sit and if you don't know already, I suppose you do know Mohammed's point. Knowledge, and actually ISO, I really can't stress strongly enough. ISO says there should be no knowledge management department. Knowledge is exactly Mohammed's point. It's like oxygen. It feeds through all the departments, and the document, the ISO standard, in the last part of the standard, it goes through every function in the organization. HR, business analyst, business intelligence, risk management, learning and development. And it shows you how knowledge plays out in those different departments. Okay, very good. Craig, very interesting. Okay, so we're in accordance. Okay, so yeah, perhaps the survey was a tad unfair, but I would say, yeah, ISO, if you're maybe not so much if you're not directly a knowledge manager. Fair point, Anastasia. But I would think if you want to be on the head of the curve, grab it, get hold of it, right? And you only need one copy for the whole organization. They allow you to share it. Okay, good point. Let's build on that. All right, so again, from the World Economic Forum, just to show you how fast things are changing, okay? This is what they're saying, is that a huge percentage of jobs are going to be new jobs that we've never seen before around green transition, climate change, according to the World Economic Forum, okay? The question to ask yourself is, how will the company pivot to that? How ready are we for that? How can we use knowledge management to get ourselves ready for that, to speed that transition for the organization? These are issues that will affect all companies. Nobody can take a pass on these. Okay, very good. So a bit of a wordy slide here, but I think it kind of captures what I've said. So I'm just going to ask you to speed read it on the right while I explain the concept that we've kind of all been talking about here, right? And drawing the differentiation between data and information and showing how important it is. If we all worked at the same company now, many of the employees, us, me specifically, would have been in danger of making wrong conclusions. And it's only by having this sharing, this continuous sharing, that we can adjust and learn things from each other. That's the point of knowledge. So this on the right, it talks about it, again, reinforcing Larry Prusak's comment. It talks as a new form of capitalism, okay? And not, and much more seen as a form of energy, systems, flows, that knowledge should be free to flow wherever it wants to go. This is why that ISO document is so unusual, because ISO usually is quite conservative, but this one's very progressive and very visionary. But if I look at this thing on the left, to make it easy sometimes for leaders to get to have an aha moment, this is Metcalfe's law on the left. So it just to give you a quick flavor. If you have 3 people in a network, there are 3 lines of communication. But as soon as you add one more person, there are actually 6 lines. As you add another person, 5, there are 10 lines. 6, 15. What happens is it's exponential growth. It's not linear. There is no one-to-one mapping. As you add more people to the network, there are more possible connections. If you think about that in your organization, there is a formula for Metcalfe's law. You can look it up. It's very easy. You can map out the potential. This is just the potential for sharing, right? Everybody knows things. How the modern knowledge manager and what the leaders are after is, can you fire up that network? Can you make all those connections live and active? So knowledge, it's not about finding a document or searching. It flows freely. It finds you when you have the problem. This is the modern company. This is the way that what they're looking for, and this is the way that they want to try and de-risk the chance of being made obsolete or being left behind. Okay, so a form of energy. Think of it like that. Okay, and why is the time right now? here, we've never in history been in a position like this, where all these things are happening at the same time, okay? You can run your eye over these in your own time, but I'm going to just draw your attention to one of them, okay? That's the kind of fifth point down. The highest multi-generational workplace in history. We've never in history had 5 generations in the workplace today, okay? And that is a huge challenge. And that comes back, I can't remember who made the point about consumers in the chat. Consumers want to consume in different ways. This is very much the case with employees today. With 5 generations, there is a new generation, for some of you, me, my children would be the example, who do not use email. They only use email when they talk to people of my generation. Amongst themselves, email is a slow, inefficient modes of communication. They have far lighter, faster ways of doing that. Now, if you've got multi-generation and you've got multi-ways of communicating, knowledge is in danger because it can become siloed in these different generational places where they want to share and contribute and collaborate. A huge challenge for organizations today is to understand the generational mix in an organization. We'll come on to that generational point a bit further. So this is from Dr. Moira Levy, another leading KM thinker. She put this on LinkedIn, I think last month. And I found it very interesting what she was saying. She said, I've been doing knowledge management for 20 years. She runs a company on knowledge management, even sells software for knowledge management. And she says, there is a divergence that's happening. The machine is going to do old knowledge management, the information stuff. The machines are going to get better and better. Think about the problems that companies have with search today, and then imagine a world in which, sorry, I'm just checking the time, in which you had Google inside your company, right? It didn't matter where any explicit knowledge sat. Google's going to find it for you, and it's going to rank it for you inside the company. That's coming and coming very, very fast. And so if you are a knowledge manager who's focused on that aspect of knowledge management, you, without being disrespectful, you need to be careful. That world is going to start to erode and be replaced by a Google-style interface for employees, which makes so much sense because too much time is wasted looking for things. Okay, therefore, what Dr. Moira Levy says, and which I agree with completely, is going to be a shift. These are the things that knowledge in blue at the bottom, change management, connecting people, culture of sharing, culture of innovation, that capturing tacit knowledge, people's experiences, as Mohammed mentioned earlier, that the machines can't do, right? Those are human-led operations. The machines can assist you in many ways, of course, community to practice, etc., but they have to be driven by humans, and that's what leaders are looking for today. That's where the value is for them. Very good. So we have one more last poll to have fun with, okay? So here's the scenario, okay? Imagine it in your own organization. A senior leader, maybe the CEO, whoever, somebody very senior comes up to you right now and they said, can you tell me, each of you, right, what is the generational breakdown in our organization? Do you know the generational breakdown in the organization? And how will we as an organization look in 5 years' time? Because obviously in 5 years' time, that the 5 generations may still be there, but the weighting of those generations will shift, okay? So we can launch the survey now. So which one are you? Yes, I can. Here you can present immediately, you have it to hand. Here are the numbers you're looking for, and I can give you the implications of this trend for our business. Or I have no idea, I'm sorry, let me get back to you on that. Or C, whilst I don't have the numbers you are looking for, I can present to you and the leadership team current generational analysis and insights for the generations in the global workplace today. Again, it's anonymous, so go ahead and participate. Let's see. The nice thing is people tend to participate, hopefully, in pulse surveys because they know they're going to get the result, which is the most interesting bit. You know your own answer, but you're curious to see how the cohort answers. So again, it's anonymous, so just jump in and do that. So this idea of understanding the generations in your workplace, it's not just a kind of quiz question or pub quiz question. It's absolutely mission critical, because these generations have different needs, different aspirations, and as somebody mentioned earlier with consumers, they have different ways of working. That's a real challenge for the organization. As well as now, okay, I don't know, Kumar, if you want to share it. Okay, here we go. All right, so again, just focus on the percentages. Okay, so 21% of you, very impressive. You're able to do that immediately. Well, you know, hats off to you. That's really the way to be. That's what you need to do, irrespective of your role. If you're in any kind of managerial or delivering business value, you need to do this. And again, a good percentage of you are not alive to it. That's fine. Now you have the opportunity to fix it. And again, roughly a third. You don't have it for the company, but you can give market trends. Now, the good news, we live in this era, you know, when I first started working in corporate world, you had to sign up for Forrester reports and everything, and you hoped that your boss would include you in the group that had access. Today, you can find everything for free. So all the big consultancies, and the two best on these are EY, Ernst Young, and Deloitte. They know this is a hot area, and they've put a lot of resource into it. So you can literally go to their website and ask generational analysis, and you'll get a ton of stuff with quite a lot of depth as well about what different generations are looking for. Like, for instance, Gen Z, the most recent group, they don't plan at staying at the company more than 3 years. There's a real knowledge challenge for you right there. So all of you, whatever position you're in, you can get the missing pieces externally about the marketplace, but internally, for the first bit, that group, you've done a lot more work to understand that, and that's not easy to do. So credit to you. That's the direction you need to do. All of us need to have on our fingertips to be able to answer that senior leader immediately. Because if you don't know the generation breakdown in your organization and the trend, you're making decisions on imperfect knowledge, and dangerous decisions on imperfect knowledge. And that could cost the company, because we've seen the speed of change. Okay, great.
Okay, there's a comment, Reuven.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says, sorry, it's gone ahead a bit more. It said, there's the generation. Oh dear, I can't get it up. There are two comments really. We have been heading towards a cliff edge in terms of generations. One of the key change is that younger generations are more willing to change.
They're more adaptable. Yeah, I can see.
Yes, yeah. Change a role as well as organizations they work for. Royalty necessarily is of high value.
Yeah, isn't. So, and this is absolutely, we might not like it, but Mohammed is absolutely right. There's a generation entering the workplace for which loyalty is not a value. You cannot count on them to be with you for a long time, but they're talented, okay? And they're incredibly hardworking, okay? But they want access to power. Now, you can use them in many interesting ways. I talk about this on the course. It's not appropriate for today, but Mohammed is absolutely right on that. Okay, the next one.
And there is one from Craig Johnson. Answered C, as currently we have a high turnover rate in our industry. Our concern is slightly different, as we have a very young workforce and have already lost a lot of more older members that have experienced an understanding of why X or Y was performed in the past and how it integrates to the whole organization. Sorry.
So
the understanding.
The whole organization, Jess?
It moves away. So, sorry. I lost it now. Sorry.
It's okay. I've got it. Don't worry.
You got it.
Yeah, I've got it. Being younger, also, as other companies offer them something better, financial location, then we also lose them. It's absolutely right. So it's great that, you know, this is why it's so much fun, knowledge management today. We're getting validation from people in the marketplace right here, telling us all that this is confirming it. And then I just use this in the next course with the next group. I said there was Craig, a guy, he explained that he's picked up this observation as well. It's much more valuable when people can validate it with their own experience. That's knowledge sharing. Craig's experience as opposed to information and data. You need both, of course, but it's always worth more when it's got somebody's experience. And he's absolutely right. You've got a young generation that are shifting fast, okay? Even inside the company, they're shifting fast, okay? But they're talented. They can make those shifts. They're agile. So we need to exploit that. But they're also shifting up, across, and out, right? As Craig says. Then you've got the older generation who left with valuable knowledge in their heads, knowledge loss, knowledge flight, knowledge capture, knowledge transfer. Again, you'll see this is a huge theme. They call it knowledge flight in ISO. And there are a number of interesting modern techniques to capture that knowledge before it leaves, not the exit interview, which is ineffective, like the employee survey. Okay, so great points. And thank you for sharing, everyone. Okay, and then Duru, companies also evaluate employees. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I don't know that as evidence. I don't know that companies actually declare that, excuse me, openly, that we let. It's obviously an observation you've picked up, and it seems Mohammed agrees with you. I can't evidence that, and I don't. But it'd be great if you could show us some evidence of that, or are you just giving us anecdotal experience, which is also the US? Okay, so the US is we're running out of time, but the US is a fascinating place because for some of us that I do a lot of courses in America because KMI is an American company. There was a learning curve for me. Right? In America, you don't have to give any notice, right? Unlike here in Europe, where it's 3 months notice, typically, right? Employee can't let you go without giving you 3 months, enough time to try and find another job. And an employee can't leave a company without giving notice. Then it's the company's discretion. We might say, okay, you gave us your notice, you can go in 1 month. In America, you can, they call it at will. You can leave in many states. You can just literally walk in on the morning and say, I'm going tomorrow. This is my last day. And likewise, the employer can let you go as well. So because of that, the culture of loyalty is impacted. Duro, I hear what you're saying. Am I getting that right? Just give me a signal or come off mute. Yeah, so that is a real, think about that in terms of knowledge capture. Somebody could just go, you have no notice whatsoever. So you have to think of something much more innovative, which is where we come up with the concepts that we haven't got time today, but things like reverse mentoring, external communities of practice, etc., to continue that knowledge transfer, irrespective of whether the person's going. Yeah, so it's negotiable in the UK. The more it tends to be, the more senior you are, the longer the notice period you need. Yeah, no, I just thought it was the movies until somebody from America said to me on the course, no, this is reality. That's how it works in America, which I think is terrible, frankly, but for all kinds of reasons, but it is what it is. It must be something to do with American culture of freedom, right? Anyway, there we are. Very good. Okay, so this is the generations. We talked about this already, and you can find tons of this stuff on the internet in real detail about what they're looking for, their particular skills, echoed by a number of you in the chat as well. Okay, I'm going to have to jump a little ahead because we got so into the conversation, the time has defeated us. So just going to go a little quicker here and then get to the last bit. But these are good examples of knowledge economy companies, okay? If you'd gone to investors, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago and said, I have an idea for a company with no assets, no marketing, no sales force, they would have just laughed you out of the building. Yet both of these organizations fit that bill exactly. Organizations built on knowledge as their asset. Uber know who wants to go from point A to point B, and Uber know who can take them from point A to point B. My value is bringing those two parties together. My value is the knowledge of that. Now they develop that even further Many of you will know with Uber, when you finish your Uber ride, you rate the driver. Maybe less of you know that the driver rates you. Now you need to pause and think about that, right? Because that's valuable knowledge that cannot be found in data and information. That is the driver's experience of you as a passenger. Let's say I'm a young female student, I'm at university and I'm doing Uber driving in the evenings because I need the money. And I have a passenger who was very threatening to me or behaved in a way. I can message that back in my feedback and I no longer have to pick that passenger up. And that passenger's rating goes down. Why? Because it's critical for Uber. They have two customers, not one, right? They have the people who want to drive. I want that girl to drive for me, the Uber operator, and I want her to feel comfortable and safe. I will only send her passengers that are rated highly by other people like her that fit her profile as a driver, right? The knowledge economy, the value proposition is established by understanding the needs of both parties. And this is increasingly the way forward. So I do a lot of work in the Middle East. And for those of you that are from there or you know about it, they have this thing called the 2030 vision. And the key thing about the 2030 vision is they want to increase non-oil revenue from 16% to 50% by 2030, okay? It wakes up the entire society to the importance of knowledge sharing, okay? That's, they know, more important than land, labor, and capital. That they have. What they do not have is the new economic models that will move them from oil production to non-oil. And if we look here from the think tank, just because of the interest of time, draw your attention to the second bullet point on the right. Key takeaway, number 2, by investing in a knowledge-based economy, the kingdom understands the importance of human capital for future economic development. Okay, they know they would love nothing better than for the next big digital innovation like TikTok to come from Saudi Arabia, not from, where does TikTok come from? There's a one that I'll just throw into the chat, because all the other ones come from the West Coast, right? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. But TikTok changed the game, okay? TikTok is Chinese. If you didn't know that, you know it now, right? The world is shifting. It can come from anywhere now. It doesn't have to come from the West Coast of America. They want to innovate things in their economy that can be global winners like TikTok. If you look at the revenues of TikTok, it will blow your mind. More than YouTube, more than Facebook. That's how much TikTok makes for the Chinese economy, okay? To come from Saudi Arabia. To do that, they need to empower people. They need knowledge to flow fast. People who from Saudi studied in America can come back and share what they know about West Coast startups, etc., etc. You get the idea. Okay. We're seeing this across the board. So I do a lot of work with pharmaceutical companies. They have to change, the entire organization has to pivot. It's pivoting from being a pill-centric industry, making pills and medications, to becoming a patient-centric. They want to be your life partner from cradle to grave, monitoring your health on a personalized basis. For a pharmaceutical company to get that position in our lives, they need new skills. They need a new culture in their organization. And that's what they're saying. We have to change to stay alive. Otherwise, Google might go into pharmaceuticals and do much better job of being your life doctor. Google with you wherever you are, whatever age you're going through, whatever difficulty, stress, divorce, obesity, Google's your life medical partner and takes that space. That's the pressure. Like we saw with 2030 in Saudi Arabia, they also have one. Everybody now is under impetus to shift. Health service in the Middle East, again, they need to shift from being here, service-centric to patient-centric. That requires a mind shift. That's why knowledge management is we do so much work in this part of the world. Okay, now this from APQC 2023, this year, what qualities do they looking for from a knowledge manager? Number one, change management, right? Number 2, design thinking. Number 3, storytelling. Okay, that's where the value is. Are you adept at doing these things? Exactly. There you go. Thank you, Mohammed. I don't know you, but we are simpatico. More valuable than gold or oil. Absolutely. That was the point of my talk. So thank you so much for that. Okay, so let's look at these qualities, and let me see if I just enough time to do one quick. I'm going to take storytelling as an example. Okay, and I think that'll get us to the end of our show. So be a good knowledge manager, you need to be a good storyteller. Now, there's lots of different ways of telling stories, but I'm just going to give you an example of a story. Well, you'll have to decide if I'm a good storyteller or not. But you saw earlier we were talking about Uber. Okay, so Uber changed the car market. Let's build on that, and I'll tell you a story in 3 slides that, if we were a car company, would wake everybody up. Okay. All right. So let me just check that. Not missing anything. Rose, you're in good shape. All right. So if you think about Uber and you think about the coming of driverless cars, okay, Uber is already in trouble. So Uber decided it had to pivot again, almost eat itself, right, and invest in driverless cars. So we invested about $1 billion in driverless cars in 2020. They couldn't make a go of it, so they sold all that to another company that's specializing in driverless cars. So they couldn't make the pivot. They're now trying Uber Eats and pivoting again, right? There's many different ways to pivot, right? That pivot didn't work out, cost them $1 billion, didn't work out, but it did work out. I'm just telling you a story of cars in 3 slides. Okay? It worked out for this company. I was in San Francisco earlier this year on holiday with my family. My children started freaking out when, on 3 different occasions, a car passed us and there was no driver in the car. Okay, I had somebody from America who confirmed. So this was in San Francisco. We were on holiday. This company's called Cruise. It's a 24/7 driverless taxi service. Right, you're out with your friends late at night. Somebody you don't have to feel worried or vulnerable if you're going home in different ways. You get ordered, you have your account, you order the Cruise account, you order the driverless car. Your friends see that you got into the car and you're safe, and it takes you home. Now, the guy from America said, "Yep, I live in Dallas, and we just launched it in Dallas." Okay. Now look at the pivot from Uber. Okay, couldn't get the driverless cars, to Cruise now delivering driverless cars. Think of all the industries that are going to be impacted, taxi services, etc., by the coming of driverless taxi service. Okay. And now let me pivot again, all within a space of a few years. Okay. Then, and we'll finish on this point here. This is the last slide. Does anybody know what we're looking at here? What is this picture of? Craig is right. Okay, I'm just going to finish the story here. So I'm going to just use cars. Okay, so we had Uber disrupting the car industry, driverless cars disrupting Uber. And this is Neom, the city of the future. They call it the city of the future, but they're building it now. Okay, on the coast of Saudi Arabia. It is a completely carbon neutral green city of the future. Okay, well, I call it City of the Future. As I say, they're building it now. It's called the Line or Neom, depending which word you use. And here's the key point. It has no cars. There are no cars in this City of the Future. So if you're in the car industry, you just got pivoted out of existence, right? That is the speed of change that we're talking about. So I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. It's so much easier to present when it's interactive and the conversation actually helps develop the presentation, because then penny drops for everybody. We just, as a group, we illustrated modern knowledge management, more valuable than gold or oil, as Mohammed would say. I love that. Thank you, everybody. And you can catch me at KMI.